Well, the algorithm didn't like me taking a week off, so this week I'm going to try using a microphone and just walk around the garden, which means we're going to have some traffic noise, but we'll also have some bird singing in the background. Just doing a quick walk by here, and then we'll get out in the garden and look at a few things a little closer. That petunia tower isn't looking its best. It's really wet out this morning. The green stalk planter is looking pretty good. It's got beetroot at the top, then beans, then peppers, then beans, and then peppers again. The beans are just starting to flower good in the green stalk, but we have some bush beans that are setting on close by. This first straw bale with the sweet potatoes is kind of stunted. We had 2 slips that died in there. Here's my small stackable pots. I put a bunch of pepper seedlings in there, and I'm going to thin those out to 1 per pot there pretty soon. I have a couple of sunflowers growing there. Over here we have some China jade cucumbers, and over here we have sun gold cherry tomato. This cage over here we have some Seychelles pole beans, and they're getting to the top. I might have to add some extensions there. Then we have some long beans in this cage. Some Japanese long cucumbers on that cattle panel. Then this first tomato in this row over here is a giant Belgium, and it's got some tomatoes setting on. Those get very large. And we have Tasmanian chocolate next to it. Get around here where you can see the tomatoes hopefully. This is a Baronia. It's got a few, you can't see them very well. Then that's a Rosella purple. It's got maybe a half a dozen tomatoes on it, maybe a few more. Then Rosella purples at the end. It's got some little tomatoes at the top and lots of blooms. While we're over here, let's look at the other straw bale. It's got 2 different types of sweet potatoes growing in it, and it's doing better than the other straw bale with sweet potatoes. And I've got another group of stackable pots with some rose moss growing that hasn't bloomed yet. This little eggplant here is kind of stunted. I'll show you the other one real quick after I show you this straw bale. The straw bale has 2 geranium kiss tomatoes and 1 Shimo Furry, and the Shimo Furry is just loaded with tomatoes. And the geranium kiss are just starting to get a few, but they've got tons of blooms, so they're going to catch up soon. While we're over here, we've got bush beans. There are 2 different types that are starting to produce beans already. This is Red Swan. You can see it's got quite a few beans on it. They'll be ready to pick soon. There's another type on the other side there that's producing beans already, but the other 3 types aren't. This is a French variety. One of the words in the name actually translates to butter, so I've just been calling it butter bean. It's got some beans on it. And the other varieties just have tiny beans on them, like this one here. There's the other eggplant. It's got a lot bigger leaves on it and is off to a better start. I've got some random peppers stuck here and there. That's a heterozygous for mutant. And we got one over here called Twister. I've got a lot of crabgrass coming up. I need to get out here and pull one of these days. I wear these sleeves just to keep the mosquitoes off of me mainly. Then we have some volunteer potatoes that came up over here. I just let them grow. While we're here, let's look at another Shimo-furry that's also loaded. It's in this hanging 5-gallon pot here. 5-gallon grow bag rather. Then we have some more potatoes in grow bags I started very late just as an experiment. But these volunteer potatoes are looking pretty good. I haven't done anything to them. There's some more potatoes in a grow bag very late. There's some peppers and some beetroot. And some of that beetroot is going to be ready to harvest before too long. It's doing pretty good in a grow bag. We had over an inch of rain the other day, and the potatoes were so tall that the extra weight of the rain just kind of made them fall over. So some of them are actually reaching down to the ground now. But we have Kennebec, Yukon Gold, and Adirondack Blue, and one grow bag that is mixed with the 3 types for a total of 7 grow bags altogether. I have a volunteer sunflower I'm letting grow here. I trimmed all the lower leaves, have a few random peppers growing in these pots. Here's a look at the mutants. Here's another geranium kissed tomato. It doesn't really have any tomatoes, but it's got tons of blooms. And is already probably close to 4 feet tall. I assumed it was going to be smaller than that, but evidently not. And right behind here we have another Multi-flora tomato that's got more blooms on it and one truss than I've seen on any tomato ever. This is a dark stripe micro. It's probably a 1.5 feet tall, and it's got 2 trusses of blooms, and they're just starting to set a few tomatoes. But if you counted the individual buds that haven't opened, there might be 150 or 200 just on this one truss. As you can see, some of them are starting to open, and they'll be setting on soon. And then we have another truss right down here that has probably a little more than half as much as the top truss. Over behind the potatoes, I have some sunflowers growing. I've got Mammoth, Velvet Queen, and another variety I can't remember right now. They'll be looking good in another few weeks. I'm just going to thin those to 1, whichever one's the tallest here pretty soon. Here's that Shimo-furry in the hollow log. It's loaded with tomatoes. And it's starting to lay over, so I'm going to have to give that some support, I think. It's still got quite a bit of variegation, but some of the new foliage isn't variegated. Tons of tomatoes. There's another Bundaberg rumball. It's got some tomatoes at the bottom. Let me get around on the other side. You can't see them very good, but they're there. This is a Purple Rain. It's got quite a few tomatoes that have set on. The next one is also a Purple Rain. It's starting to get a few up towards the top, so it's going to do pretty well. And we have Sleeping Lady, and it's done really well for me before, and it looks like it's going to do really well again. It's got some smaller ones up towards the top. I had a Belgium Giant in this cage, but it had no tomatoes on it yet, and it started to get some blight, so I just pulled it. I'm going to put another late tomato in there. And we have some more sunflowers and one Mexican sunflower over there, and another late tomato surrounded by crabgrass. Then we got a couple of rows of carrots succession planted. You can tell the difference in the size of the 2 rows. getting a little behind on my weeding, as you can see. Then we have a small row of zinnias planted out in the garden. I'm looking forward to seeing those bloom. Some of the corn is over 6 feet tall now. The variegated corn isn't nearly as tall as the non-variegated, and before I go any further, don't ever plant two types of corn together unless you plan on crossing them, because they will cross. Here's some of the variegated corn. It's looking really good. Let's get back behind there so we can take a look. Here's a look at the variegated corn a little closer. I'll get over here and try to take a closer look at some of these leaves so you can see how pretty they are. And the corn, if everything goes to plan, should be multicolored also and should pop well. That's what I'm shooting for. I also have a few sunflowers back here behind the corn that won't be visible for a while. Maybe not until the corn comes down. There's some oregano. I just took a couple of hunks off that group there and transplanted them into a different spot over here, and they're starting to grow pretty well now. Let's get a closer look at some of these mutant peppers. I like the foliage on this one a lot, but it has no peppers yet. This one's just now starting to get a few blooms that are opening up. Then I have a couple of variegated ones. Here's one here. I had this one indoors and I just cut it way back, probably more than 50%, and it's starting to perk up now, and I think it'll be producing some bloom soon. I'm hoping the bees can help this one produce some peppers because it didn't do well inside. And we have this one over here, and another nice variegated one right there. And I just noticed that we've got some whitefly activity over by the potatoes. I'm going to have to keep an eye on those because they can get out of control pretty quickly if you let them. There's one on top of that leaf that you can see. We have some cilantro that's bolting in this grow bag, but I have some on the other side that was planted later that I just harvested yesterday. Used in some taco stuff. Got some dill that's starting to flower and some basil over here, which reminds me I have some small basil planted also. Let's go take a peek at that. I just planted some between some of the peppers over by the peppers and corn. And that's a darker variety there. Dark opal, I think it's called. There's a bunch over there. I'll thin that out to one. I just dropped some seeds and some of them came up pretty thick. I stuck some tomato suckers in that jar, and they're already starting to root. I'll be sticking these in the ground soon. So we'll have some late tomatoes hopefully after some of the other plants have started to peter out. This is a Midwest midnight eclipse crossed with a Courbaki. Look how long and thin that pepper is. Definitely unique. I think that's where we'll stop for this week. If you're just now finding this channel and you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.